Personally, I think there's just one main thing that has to be done in order to make, as you say, a significant impact. And that means you have to put a price on carbon, period. Right now, what industries are able to do is pollute, to dump their waste free of charge into the atmosphere. But there is a price associated with that waste, and that is a price that comes at a very, very high amount, both to our natural communities and to our human communities. So basically, industries at this point are kicking that price down the road for other people to pay. And unless there is an incentive, a monetary incentive in an economic market for industries to reduce emissions, I don't believe it will be done on the scale or level that it has to be done. Well, if we're talking about total emissions, that would be China. China is the largest emitter in the world, but I think it's really necessary to distinguish between total emissions and emissions per capita. So if we're looking at emissions per capita or emissions by how many people or households within a given country, it's not China. China falls way down to the bottom, actually. You have countries like Australia and United States and Canada, which I think are ranked 4th, 6th, and 7th, that emit 6 times the amount of total emissions that China does. And so when we're talking about policy, we absolutely need to be talking about total emissions and which countries we really need to target. But there's another issue there. The United States alone is responsible for over 24% of the world's emissions, so we really need to be looking at policies within our own country. As of this moment in time, I would say no. However, I think that there is great potential for that to be the case, and I don't think it's just about the number of people, but I think it's about specific people, in particular policy and decision makers at very high levels. Ultimately, as we talked about, there needs to be a price put on carbon, and that has to happen at a very high policy level, nationally and internationally. Are there enough people working on that right now? Absolutely not, or at least not effectively. Are there enough people concerned that climate change is something real and something that is going to have a very negative impact and it's something they want to do something about? I think a lot of recent polls show that this is the case, that people are concerned. Whether or not that concern translates to behavioral changes and really doing something in your life, whether it be reducing how much you drive, reducing your consumption of electricity or products that are very energy intensive, that's another story. So I think that because people are really concerned, there is the potential there to translate that into behavioral change. And again, we live in a democratic society, and so these policy decision makers, we can vote in or out depending on how well of a job we think that we're doing. And so it's about who is involved, but it's also about really mounting that motivation and mounting that shift that we need from the bottom up, from a grassroots level, from community levels, to make that shift and make those changes so that they can happen at the top.